Good.
Sure, sir. Good evening. Welcome to the sixth session of the conference, Pakistan in the New Geopolitical Era, Opportunities and Challenges. It is my honor to introduce the esteemed participants in the session. Professor Yoga Jyotsna Varanasi, Ambassador Anil Trigunayat, Dr. Michael Rubin, Commodore R.S. Vasan, and Dr. Anshuman Behera. The session is chaired by Professor Yoga Jyotsna Varanasi. Professor Yoga Jyotsna is an alumna of Osmania University. She represented India to workshops and summer schools in Pakistan, USA, and Sri Lanka. She has supervised nearly 40 research scholars, mostly from the armed forces. She is a guest faculty with colleges of Air Warfare, Defense Management, and Naval War College. As a freelancer, Dr. Jyotsna writes on issues related to national security. Her publications appeared in CASS Journal and CAW Journal. She edited study materials on international relations for Osmania, on diplomacy and foreign policy for B.R. Ambedkar Open University. Dr. Yoga Jyotsna comments on current affairs in the electronic media and keeps participating in virtual programs. Key speakers. Our first speaker is Ambassador Anil Trigunayat. He is a former ambassador to Jordan, Libya, and Malta. As a career diplomat, Ambassador Trigunayat has served in Indian missions in Cote d'Ivoire, Bangladesh, Mongolia, USA, Russia, Sweden, and Nigeria. He served in Moscow as Deputy Chief of Mission in the rank of Ambassador. He was also India's ambassador to Libya, Jordan, High Commissioner to Malta. He superannuated in 2016. He is a regular contributor and commentator on foreign and economic policy and education and interfaith dialogue related issues. West Asia, Africa, and Russia, and managing India's interests in conflict zones are his special areas of interest. Ambassador Trigunayat is a distinguished fellow and head of West Asia Experts Group at the Vivekananda Institute International Foundation. He is associated with several think tanks and chambers of commerce. He has published papers in books and periodicals. Currently, he is serving as the chairman of Confederation of Education Excellence. Our next speaker is Dr. Michael Rubin, who is a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, where he specializes in Iran, Turkey, and the broader Middle East. A former Pentagon official, Dr. Rubin has lived in post-revolution Iran, Yemen, and both pre- and post-war Iraq. He also spent time with Taliban before 9/11. For more than a decade, he taught classes at sea about the Horn of Africa and Middle East conflicts, culture, and terrorism to deployed U.S. Navy and Marine units. Dr. Rubin is the author, co-author, and co-editor of several books exploring diplomacy, Iranian history, Arab culture, Kurdish studies, shared politics, including Seven Pillars: What Really Causes Instability in Middle East, Kurdistan Rising, Dancing with Devil, The Perils of Engaging Rogue Regimes, and Eternal Iran Continuity and Chaos. Our next speaker is Commodore R.S. Vasan, an alumnus of Defense Service Staff College, the Naval War College, and International Visitor Leadership Program USA. Commodore Seshadri Vasan has a distinguished service of over 34 years in the Navy and the Coast Guard. His appointments include command of warship, two major air stations, and a maritime air squadron. He has participated both in 1971 war and IPKF operations. He was an instructor at the Naval War College, India. Prior to retirement, he was the regional commander of Indian Coast Guard Region East. He is presently the Director General of Chennai Center for China Studies and the Regional Director of National Maritime Foundation, Tamil Nadu. His area of study includes Indo-Pacific, neighborhood policies, maritime security, stability, counterterrorism, and maritime dynamics in the Iowa, China, blue economy, and ocean governance. Our final speaker is Dr. Anshuman Behera. Dr. Anshuman Behera is an associate professor in conflict resolution and peace research program at National Institute of Advanced Studies. A trained political scientist, Dr. Behera worked with Institute of Defense Studies and Analysis and Institute of Conflict Management, New Delhi, before joining National Institute of Advanced Studies. His main areas of research interest are in field of political violence, internal conflicts in India, Nepal and Bangladesh, democracy and governance in India, political theory and social impact of development. Apart from his extensive work on Maoist insurgency in India and militancy in South Asia, Dr. Behera has also written on insurgency in Myanmar and Nepal. Governance in the northeastern states and the social impact of assessment of infrastructure projects in India are his present research areas. He teaches courses on theoretical construct of understanding conflicts, qualitative research methodology in social sciences, and approaches to conflict resolution. With this, I hand over this floor to the session chair, Professor V. Yoga Jyotsna.
Thank you, Ms. Aparna Nair. Uh, Exercising the privileges of the chair, may I take just 5 minutes of my time? I was originally allotted 4:35 to 4:45. I will take 5 minutes and leave more time for the speakers. In international relations, each time we enter a class, we start the lectures apart from the topic about the dynamic nature of the subject. That is exactly what has happened between the period when the program was conceived and the time when it is getting executed this afternoon. Pakistan has done yet another mistake in the long list of mistakes that it has committed. And today, our session is going to discuss Pakistan in the new geopolitical era, opportunities and challenges. In the After the globalization has attracted worldwide attention, and many countries have benefited, and many countries, when they mismanaged, have lost out in the process of globalizing their economies and getting recolonized or uh, colonized once again. The Some few countries have learned the lessons of colonial era and then tried to come out of them. But Pakistan has not changed its style of functioning, has not given up its administration under the army. Every one of us is aware of the popular adage that every country has an army, but it's the Pakistani army that has a nation. And the control and rule of the army in that country is evident in most of its actions. And most of us on the panel as well as in the audience are aware that the Fauji Foundation controls the economy of Pakistan, and that a lieutenant general, when he retires from the service, gets nothing less than 100 crores in his kitty legally. Illegally, the accounts are unimaginable. And I don't know where the crores of acres of land is getting apportioned to the military personnel in Pakistan when the country itself is so very tiny and small compared to India or many other major countries of Asia. In the new geopolitical era, there are plenty of opportunities which Pakistanis should have grabbed with both hands, but they failed to do so. They were not able to establish their diplomatic or their democratic processes. Nawaz Sharif tried at one point of time, but then he has passed on the baton to his brother, and the brother is a puppet in the hands of his handlers. It's very unfortunate to comment on these lines in an open forum, but that is the reality. And the organizers, I'll close my remarks with these few sentences and statements. And what I wish to inform Ambassador Trigunayat ji, sir, I was asked by the Namaskar, sir. I was asked by the organizers to give Commodore Vasan the first chance because I believe he has some emergency and he has to exit the panel as soon as he completes his presentation. So may I request Commodore Vasan to take the session.
Thank you, Chair.
And make, yeah.
Good evening to all the panelists, and it's a great pleasure being here. My apologies for not being able to stay here throughout the session, mainly because there's another big conference that's taking place in the evening. But I must first of all compliment Indic Research Forum scholars and the organizers for planning something, of course, which happened well before Pahalgam, but it's very contextual, and I am sure that the deliberation yesterday and today would have given us some idea of where we stand vis-a-vis our Western neighbor. I think you may have to share the slides for me.
Yes, sir, we are doing that. Satya?
Yeah, please do that.
Commodore Vasan is speaking on Pakistan-China bilateral relations in the era of Cold War 2.0. That's the title of his presentation.
Can you go to full screen? Yeah, thank you.
Can,
So
can
basically,
you see the slides and can you see the slides, sir?
Yes,
Yeah,
it's visible.
I'll tell you when to advance.
Is it visible?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, but what I was trying to look at was look at the strategic and military analysis from the point of view of somebody who's been in the Navy for 35 years and another 22 years in various think tanks all over. It doesn't qualify me to be an expert, but it at least allows me to share my views on how I look at the emerging scenario. And there will also be America in slant because of my own background, but also the importance of both the Arabian Sea as well as the Bay of Bengal and in the Indian Ocean region for India's own trajectory, which is on an ascendancy, despite some of the hiccups which are there. Next slide, please. Yeah, I think I'll skip all this. I'm sure it would have been covered by various speakers in the previous sessions. But I have to say that, this relationship as far as China is concerned, which is also the focus of my presentation, to say that, it is solidified in the 60s and, there's been a growing influence. And India's influence in the region and this alignment with Soviet Union was one of the factors at that time. 1962, another hallmark area, was when China's support to Pakistan was strengthened. And there was both direct and indirect support. In 65, of course, when we fought a war with Pakistan, again, there was some amount of support that was received by them. This is all recorded. 1970s is when China provided Pakistan with nuclear technology, and that's an important milestone for bilateral relations between China and India, because that is what shaped the trajectory of our relations. Next, please. Yeah, I think this slide is coming a little early, but it doesn't matter. Basically, I will discuss this a little more later. Except to say that, Turkey is a new player here in the North Arabian Sea. They started supplying drones to Maldives. They have a military and strategic relationship with Pakistan. There have been combined exercises in North Arabian Sea between China, Turkey, Russia, Pakistan, and that is changing the maritime balance in the North Arabian Sea, and I'll talk about it a little later. This slide came a little earlier, so it doesn't matter. Next. Yeah, what are the present-day strategic relationships? One is, of course, at the military level. Where we are looking at China, which says that Pakistan relation is deeper than the oceans, higher than the mountains, and various kind of adjectives are used. But definitely, it is the most significant military partner, and it's offering both conventional and unconventional support. I'm not very sure whether some of these were covered before. If you can advise me, I will either continue on this or I can skip this in case this kind of information has already been shared. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, has it been shared or is it all right for me to go ahead?
Sir, I think you can add this.
All right. So, this is where, we are looking at the fact that China has become a primary supplier of nuclear and missile technology. There have been, nuclear proliferation concerns here, as well as concerns of, this both the DLU's technology coming into the hands of the ISI and others who are in Pakistan. And 1990 to 2000 was very, very important period, this 10 years plus, and everybody is aware of the role of A.K. Khan at that time. And the Kahita nuclear plant, the missile systems have been refined ever since. So, there is a degree of sophistication today that is of concern to the nuclear subcontinent, where India faces two nuclear adversaries. Next, please. Yeah, this is where, we are clear that there's been a continuous it's work in progress kind of a thing, where they can carry out joint research and development in missile technology. And this definitely leads to regional instability. And including the superpowers are concerned about, who would be controlling the nuclear program. Everybody's talking about, what kind of mechanisms do we have for any kind of a rogue action by the ISI or the Pakistan Army in the situation such as the one which are facing now post Pahalgam. Next, please. Yeah, these are some of the emerging threats which are there. I've also made a reference to the Kashmir attack which happened just the other day, and that this is obviously there are the different ways it has been analyzed by strategists, etc. Where they are saying it is a sort of provocation, more to carry out a greater amount of division amongst the societies, the civil societies. But the point is here, I think there's been outright condemnation from all, including China. And that's something that we need to make note of. But the point is that how much of this would actually translate to concrete action by India, which has already initiated other measures apart from the kinetic actions along the NOC, which is perhaps now, with the abrogation of the surveillance of underwater treaty. But in the case of Pakistan, there is a similar agreement is not valid. And therefore, guns are booming on both sides of the NOC. And this is what everybody is worried about, what would be the escalation matrix in the coming days. Next, please. So this is something which has to be factored into how this has changed the geographic, geostrategic, geoeconomic equations in the subcontinent. And this is something that was a very conscious decision by China as part of the BRI to invest heavily to overcome the Malacca dilemma, which we are familiar to say that the dependence on Malacca Straits as far as China's import, export, as well as energy security is concerned, was something that was perhaps at the mercy of the more dominant Indian Navy in times of crisis. This is why they tried to link up Xinjiang with Gadar, and through the CPEC, and heavy investments have been made in the CPEC from Gadar right up to the entire thing, which includes railroad networks, dams, electric stations, thermal plants, etc., etc. These are something which is not something that's going according to the plans because of the Baluchi insurgencies is there, and because of the fact that they targeted the Chinese engineers and infrastructure. Next, please. Yeah, this is the one where we are looking at countries increasing engagement in the North Arabian Sea, and that India will have to factor this when it's trying to carry out its sea control roles. We have seen in the newspapers that naval warships are already maneuvering in areas of importance within strike range. And obviously, if you do bring in that, this is not happening at the moment. This is something that could be a matter that we need to be looked at. Essentially, it would result in indirect support being provided by Turkey materially, morally, and even in terms of providing military hardware, notably the drones which have become the new form of warfare. Next. Yeah. Now, without what I did mention this as its centrality of the China-Pakistan occupied Kashmir economic corridor. I never like to refer to this as CPEC. I always like to refer to it as CPOKEC because it is something that's been built in our areas of control, not exactly control, but claims. Naval cooperation in the Indian Ocean is something which we need to factor. And we've seen the pattern of exercises that are taking place where multiple navies have participated. And this does change, as I said, the maritime equilibrium. And we are conscious of these developments, which will be factored by the naval planners and the political leaders. Next. So, as far as the naval cooperation is concerned, most of the inventory of Pakistan is now from China. Some of these are technology transfers, some of these are outright sales, and some of these are something that the Pakistan has been allowed to develop in their own country and manufacture. So I have listed them here. But due to constraints of time, I'll not go to each of this. But the point is that the submarines, which are force multipliers, the Yuan class are there. They already transferred 4 of these, and there are some more which will be built there. And Type 041 S20 is a more recent addition. And likewise, in the Air Force, the J20, J10 are all rate of inventory assess, which will be added to their inventory, and obviously that would constantly challenge the established supremacy of Indian armed forces. As far as frigates are concerned, the F-22 frigates have been given to them. The surface combatants include the 054 quite capable frigates, modern frigates, which again would be used for both sea control and sea denial operations in the North Arabian Sea. But there is the geography is not exactly with Pakistan as far as naval warfare is concerned. We saw what happened in 1931, and I was also part of the 1931 operations. And, they were constrained by ability to maneuver, and our own missile force was able to go and carry out these attacks. Of course, things are changing today with the introduction of drones, with cyber warfare, and everything else which is there. And therefore, obviously the planners in Delhi are going to be contending with what we need to face. China has also supplied the P3CRL. You are aware that it is also an American made, and some of these were also manufactured in China, and that will extend the surveillance capability and the strike capability of Pakistan. They operate from Karachi, Gwadar, and other places along the Makarun coast. Next, please. Yeah, so here is a comparison. I think I will just summarize by saying that there is no comparison, honestly, in terms of this. In each of the attacks we are 2 to 3 times more. Obviously, we have a different geography. We are required to worry about the two-front war or a two-and-a-half-front war, and therefore, these comparisons have only a minimum value in terms of what it can do in a real-time war if China also gets into the fray. However, as far as Pakistan is concerned, they do have a certain amount of capability which is better than, and in terms of maritime capability, it's more to do with the sea denial. That means you deny the opposing forces and entry where they can deliver their missile attacks, like let's say in Karachi and other facilities, as it happened in Chennai. So they will be wise up, and they would have built up their defenses, including using the Chinese direct and indirect. Therefore, likewise, in all of this, we have a superiority in terms of quality. The Rafales which are coming, the MH-60 USW helicopters which are with the Navy now, our own Arihant class of submarines which are provided the deterrence capability for the sea-based deterrence and for the second strike capability. So numerically and even quality-wise, we are way ahead, but we can't rest on your laurels because of the new factors that have been brought into that the equations of military balance are imbalanced because of China factor. Extra. Oh, I'm sure the Afghanistan also would have been discussed over here. Now, here is the point where things are not exactly healthy-very between Afghanistan and Pakistan. There have been border clashes, and both Iran, Pakistan have their own equations with Afghanistan, and because of the Sunni factor, and also because of the demand line, which has caused its own issues. So Afghanistan, increasingly surprisingly, after the Pahalgam attack, we saw the Taliban condemning the attack. So which is something which was unexpected. And the point is, there are geopolitical, geostrategic equations that are developed in the area, and there's a question of how the Afghan factor would come in the way of Pakistan, China, because China is a very relevant player in Afghanistan, and so between Afghanistan, China, and Pakistan, there will be certain amount of development of relations because of the geography. Next. Yeah, so basically we are looking at increased military cooperation that will happen because of the instability in Afghanistan, and also the Afghanistan impact on maritime security is limited, which is a landlocked country. However, indirectly, basically looks at the kind of research and activities that are taken along the CPEC and along the maritime coast, particularly along the Makarun coast, and this is something that will be factored by us. Next. So Balochistan, I think I saw, just when I joined, I saw some of the notes in the chat box which had discussed Balochistan, on its history, on its present thing, whether India can do something, did India actually enable something, and can it become a major factor in terms of India's sort of counters to what Pakistan has done today. I will leave it into the realm of speculation and not go into this much. Let's move on to the next one, please. So these are the geopolitical alliances that we are looking at as we examine the Trump 2.0. The Trump 2.0 definitely has its own impact in terms of not just the tariffs, but also in terms of the military balance. As you are aware, the Vice President of USA offered the F-35, a very expensive platform, but there are other questions on the reliability of this, the operability of the F-35, etc. So what we need to always remind ourselves is that any war that is fueled anyway obviously adds to the defense industrial complex in the US, in Europe, or any other place. So because that is one form of revenue earner, a major revenue earner for the US and other countries. Next. So these are some of the future scenarios that I'm trying to look at, which is related to greater strategic and military integration between Pakistan and China, a strengthening of Pakistan conventional forces, which is happening continuously, and more assets, more platforms will be added. There will be greater presence of Chinese, engineers, advisors, and all that. There is already happening there. And as part of the China POK economic corridor, there are offices which are jointly managed by them, but there is a certain amount of disenchantment because of the scaling down of the investments that were promised by China along the CPOK. And as far as Godar is concerned, we have seen the satellite photographs here today, they are available. There's not much that's happening. China, just like in Habanpur Tota, has a foothold, in the Indian region, in the Arabian Sea. But however, to have a permanent naval facility in Godar is something that is a future possibility, and we need to factor this. They already have something in Djibouti, and whether more such naval bases will be created is something that we need to factor. There are new players, as I said earlier, are very repeated reference to Turkey, and that's something that we need to look at and to see how they are going to get into the North Arabian Sea. They are being into Maldives, they are in Pakistan, and they are also trying to engage with other neighborhood countries of India, and that's something that has to be factored in the future scenario. Thanks. As far as nuclear escalation is concerned, there is a growing asymmetry in the India nuclear capabilities. China nuclear support to Pakistan is a major issue of concern, which needs to be looked out if they become more pronounced and leading to an enhanced nuclear deterrent in the region. I think we are fairly well prepared to take on these challenges of the future scenario. But like I said, we can be cognizant because we are surprised with Pahalgam, and we don't know what other scenarios are there, which would pose us a challenge, which will affect us economically, which will affect our GDP growth, which will affect our, Atmanirbharta growth, and it will also indirectly impinge on the SAGA, security growth for the region, because India has committed to the neighborhood first policy. Next. So these are some of the options in the case of a two-front war. In the case of conventional warfare, we have our carriers which they do not have. The submarines are a great asset because it is stealth and secrecy. And this is where China may not directly intervene in case there is a standoff between Pakistan and India because of the presented target, but indirect support will definitely be there. So on the land front, we already carried out the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force have factored the two-front engagements, and they are looking at it increasingly to see, what are the possibilities, what are the deployment patterns along the Tibet Plateau as far as China is concerned, and what are the deployment patterns of their submarines, business submarines, and other vessels in the Indian Ocean region, of which we need to constantly monitor. The NFU itself is being questioned, but however, we continue to say that we will not be the first to carry the nuclear attack. So with that, therefore, your strategic deterrence has to be of the highest order, and without any time delays, and that's something which the Strategic Forces Command would have factored into their equations. Next, please. Next. Yeah. Let me conclude by saying that the challenge Pakistan-China nexus will continue to evolve with or without Trump, and with the military and nuclear strategic relations at its core. It will shape the regional dynamics and enhance perhaps global implications. As tensions rise in Kashmir post Pahalgam and the broader region, the likelihood of conflict involving India, Pakistan, and China is ever present. No, and again, let me re-emphasize that China may not get directly involved in the event of a war with Pakistan today because of the politics and geostrategic considerations. However, both direct and indirect support is not needed. And India's future strategy must involve a multi-pronged approach, strengthening conventional forces, recalibrating our nuclear plan, including review of the LFE if required, and forging deeper international alliances and enhancing asymmetric warfare. Also, in the case of drone warfare, in the case of non-traditional threats which are there, we need to shore up our capability and move forward. The China-Pakistan alliance remains a formidable challenge. In the event of a different conflict, the key to strategic success will lie in India's ability to adapt rapidly to the changing geopolitical realities. And again, let's remind ourselves that these geopolitical realities are also held hostage to the geo-economic developments that are taking place. I'm talking about the current wars which are there. And that will make us recalibrate many of our plans, the next 5-year plans, on the DPO, they may have to be re-examined because of the challenge of the Supreme Court. We are in the lower bracket of 27%. We are not at 245 or 245, but the negotiations will have to be calibrated to see that it doesn't affect our growth class. Next.
Commodore Vasan ji, you're overshooting your time.
हो गया मेरा खत्म हो गया conclusion हो गया madam. Thank you so much.
So I think the presentation is in.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for abiding with the time. Thank you so much. May I now invite Ambassador Anil Trigunayat ji, who will be speaking on Pakistan-Islamic world relations in the new geopolitical era.
Namaskar, madam. And
Thank you, sir.
Commander Vasan, my friend Michael Rubin, and others, I must thank India Researchers Forum for thinking about this very interesting subject. Earlier, I think it was Pakistan's DNA, and now it has become idea of Pakistan. I believe that the Pakistan's DNA, in my view, is only filled with terrorism, nothing else. And this is what is giving them this kind of an advantage in certain scenarios, and they have been able to continue it for at least last 4 decades against India. I also think that Pakistan perhaps suffers from this congenital defect. And this is something that we have seen in the last one when we had this Pahalgam attacks. So that has brought to what extent the groups based there, which are supported by the deep state, and the deep state in the sense is the governing state in that place. The politicians really have no relevance in the place. So it has become a haven of terrorists, all kinds of terrorists. But they also cry that they are suffering from terrorism, as you know. But they forget the Bhasmasur syndrome. And I think they need to study what is Bhasmasur syndrome for them. As you are all aware that Pakistan was created on the basis of Islam, perhaps the only state that has been done. And so this two-nation theory that now again the general is trying to promote in the recent last week only is something that has been busted. We have seen that Bangladesh was created in 1971. So the very basic thing was shaken away. And now both we see we have created perhaps 2 problems on the other side. The other one, Bangladesh and Pakistan are trying to rejoin something like a earthworm kind of a thing. So the Yunus and Rawalpindi are working pretty closely today as we see it. So that's going to be another challenge for us. Islam, in fact, became a marketing tool, in my view, for Pakistan and a major umbrage for creating this Islamic project of Islamabad. So it always tried to tell the Middle Eastern countries that this is their natural partner. because it stands for for Islam. I mean, essentially tried to do that. And so it was bought over by most of those countries, and which was essentially led by Saudi Arabia in the beginning, and then subsequently the other countries also. This helped Pakistan a great deal in securing a lot of assistance, a bounty, for which there are several reasons, because Pakistan has population, it has fighters, it has an army which was ready to fight for anybody. It became a rentier state. It has been loaning its army, ammunition and everything to various Gulf countries, and that we have seen. So some way it has been surviving due to the zakat that it has been getting. You are all aware about the OIC story. I don't know the young people, if they are here, if they have not read it, please see the Rabat Summit of 1969, when India was also invited to become a part of the Organization of Islamic Countries. And General Yahya Khan went to the King of Morocco, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan, and told them that in case India becomes a member, I will not be able to return. And therefore, India's delegation, which was led by our former Vice President Fakhruddin Ali Ahmad, who was the Agriculture Minister at the time, could not attend, and we were offered that we could become perhaps an observer, which we declined, and the Indian delegation came back. And since then, we see that the OIC is the only forum in which Pakistan has been able to continue to prevail and exploit them, in fact, to a great extent. It also developed several relationships, especially in the military domain, with many of these countries, which are monarchical countries. And as you know, that one of the reasons was that India was not there. India thought that because of the Pakistan factor, because of the Islamic factor, perhaps our relationship will continue to remain transactional. And therefore, we saw that in the Middle East, Pakistan was holding sway. Even today, you have a very large number of their forces working on deputation and otherwise in different countries. I can just narrate two incidents. One is that Ziaul Haq himself, when he was at the Staff College in Jordan, and in 1970s, and at that time we saw that Arafat, the Palestinian movement, wanted to dislodge King Hussein. And there was fighting took place, and Ziaul Haq, along with his 300 soldiers, fought in the trenches to defeat the Palestinian leader, and they had to leave for Lebanon and then Tunis. So this is why they created a trusted relationship in the name of, again, Islam, I would say. Now, it also, what helped them was most, in my view, was immediately after the independence, while India became non-aligned country, the Pakistan chose to be a part of the United States-led Cold War 1.0. And that's why it got all the benefit that it became part of the CENTO, CETO, all those organizations in which most of these Middle Eastern countries were also part of it. So it also even got in non-NATO ally status, as you know, which I'm sure my friend Michael Rubin will be talking about. The military regimes in Pakistan continued to focus. And even though when they realized that they were unable to win India in the 4 wars that we fought, they switched over to this proxy war and followed a policy in which they were directly or indirectly supported by many of the countries in the Middle East. And then they moved to using cross-border terrorism as an instrument of their foreign policy, which continues till today. Another major important thing for Pakistan in the 70s happened was when it acquired a nuclear weapon in a clandestine manner. It started to show that this is a weapon not for Pakistan. This is a weapon for the Islamic countries. It is an Islamic bomb. And that's where most of the countries, and it has, again, while it acquired it in a clandestine manner, it also tried to give it to many of the countries. A.Q. Khan's forays with various countries, including Iran, Libya, and Iraq, and others are very clearly known. Until today, it continues to dangle that carrot for many of these countries. But in the 70s, Saudi Arabia was also going through the Wahhabi philosophy and trying to project. In 79, when we had the the Iranian regime came in and the Islamic Revolution happened, and therefore the Saudi-Iran, the contestation, geopolitical contestation actually began much more emboldened in Pakistan, because Pakistan has both the Shia and Sunni population. And so jihad became its major guiding force. And then Soviet invasion also enabled it when Saudi Arabia, United States funded, created the Mujahideens and Taliban to fight against the Soviets. And then eventually the same people came and started attacking India. So we have had this terrorism from our Western Front, and both from Pakistan and Afghanistan, which continued to remain a major problem even till today. And then we have seen that these countries, the Arab countries, especially Saudi Arabia, when it wanted to go into Yemen with this 27-member population, they want of coalition, they tried to invite Pakistan to take on. Pakistan at that time was divided, did not go. And that's when the first fallout of Saudi Arabia, which was its main benefactor, started off. And then this 27, although I must say that General Rahil Sharif, after retirement, was appointed to this force, and the Pakistani pilots were loaned, which is because it's an rentier state, so they continue to do that, and they are continuing to do that. Commodore Vasan, of course, spoke at length about the Turkey's role. So Turkey has been one of the major primary partners of Pakistan for a long time. One of the main reasons that they are together is not only Islam, because Turkey, Erdogan also wants to become an Ottomanic leader. He has the new Ottomanic ambitions. He also wanted to become an Islamic leader, in which there were two other contestants, Saudi Arabia and Iran. And therefore, Pakistan tried to play games with them. He tried to create a new kind of an OIC, which failed miserably. And therefore, but Turkey remains very much close to Pakistan in many ways. The reason is Turkey supports Pakistan on Kashmir, and Pakistan openly supports Turkey in Cyprus. So that is something very important. And both of them, again, part of some kind of a NATO and near NATO kind of a syndrome, or both of them. Now we are coming next to, in our region, closer here, to regional competition between Saudi Arabia and Iran today. And more these countries in the Gulf after the Arab Spring started thinking in terms of their own development. They realized, and I remember in 2010 when I took the then Prime Minister to Saudi Arabia, and first time Saudi Arabia seriously spoke about terrorism by Pakistan, acknowledged it openly. And we issued the Riyadh Declaration, and that has become our working principle today. And when the new government of Prime Minister Modi came to power, they started moving around. And we have developed a large number of strategic partnerships with many countries. Our relationship with them used to be transactional. It is today strategic. But with Pakistan, gradually, from an emotional relationship, from a religious relationship, it has today become far more transactional. And if there are questions, I'll be very happy to answer later on this issue. So Pakistan is today a failed state. There is no doubt about it. But it is a nuclear state. So it continues to show the bogey of this nuclear power that it has, and continues to exploit the various strategic weaknesses of many countries in the area. We have seen the United States, for example, has just recently given $400 million for maintenance of the F-16s that were apparently given to Pakistan to fight terrorism. You can imagine that. This thing, it is just very recently it happened. So they have to perhaps think once again that what is really the driving force for Pakistan. We have seen that because of our relations that have increased, enhanced, and deepened with the major Gulf countries and the Arab countries, Pakistan is no longer a factor. At one time, whole of our relationship was predicated because they were very close to Pakistan. Today, they have maintained relationship. They don't want Pakistan to go under for various reasons, instability and others. But Pakistan has this uncanny ability to encash its nuisance value with almost every country. You see China, you see Pakistan, you see United States, you see Russia. All of them they have been able to do, but people are beginning to realize the reality. So these Pahalgam attacks have actually, once again, we have seen that the most of the Gulf countries and the big powers saw what happened in Pulwama, they understood what happened in Uri, and they stood with India. Many of them said this is India's internal affair, and they did not intervene. But today, when the Pahalgam attack again last week happened, which was the most dastardly attack, almost all countries in the world have stood with India. They have condemned it. And Prime Minister Modi at that time happened to be in Saudi Arabia. He cut short his visit and came back to India. And the Saudi Crown Prince himself, and several times many statements have come. Iranians, which are close to them, they of course have their internal problems. We have seen on the Baloch and crossing each other's borders. But most of the countries today understand the game of Pakistan. So until and unless Pakistan changes its tracks, I doubt very much that it can continue to benefit the way it has been doing it for all these years from these countries. Saudi Arabia does consider that Gwadar port, which was mentioned earlier, as a strategic port. But today we are seeing among the countries in the Middle East itself, especially the Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia and Iran, a certain kind of a rapprochement is taking place. And that is very important. For India, of course, Israel is the only country in the region with which Pakistan has no relations. It has been trying very hard for a long time. It has met several times, tried to meet in a clandestine. Sometimes Israelis also play tricky games with us. But we see that because Israeli response was the firmest response in the wake of these terrorist attacks. They said that we are with you if you want to go in. So now that is the kind of a situation. India is in a good spot. Pakistan today, in my view, has really run its course as far as its encashment of the rent from its West Asian partners is concerned. I'll stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. I call upon the next speaker, Dr. Michael Rubin, who is speaking on Pakistan-USA bilateral relations in the era of Trump. Dr. Rubin?
Thank you very much. I want to start by saying how glad I am that I'm actually following Commodore Vasan, because I want to start by talking a little bit about China in terms of how it applies to my stated subject. The fact of the matter is, for too long, the United States looked at Pakistan through the lens of China in a way that was to India's disadvantage. We had, of course, both the legacy of Nehru's ideology when President Harry S. Truman first approached the partition of India and how we would balance India and China, and then where China really became a malign consideration was under Henry Kissinger and his cynical approach to the region, where in order to ingratiate himself to China, to the People's Republic of China, he was willing to throw India under the bus. And of course, when we look at with the benefit of hindsight, we're still paying the price today with regard to Kissinger's policies towards China, which arguably many have had told him that he should have seen coming, including many Indians themselves. That said, I don't want to just talk about the history. There is a pattern of the United States ignoring Pakistan when we no longer need it. And we've seen this throughout history when it comes, for example, to the Symington Amendment, when it comes to our relations with Pakistan after the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan as well, and when it comes to our relations with Pakistan after 9/11. Although in that case, it was like giving gasoline to the arsonist. when we consider Pakistan's role in terror. That said, I could see this pattern is going to continue at least, and I have no problem with it. There's absolutely no reason, given Pakistan's behavior, why the United States should continue to treat Pakistan as an ally, or frankly, as anything other than an adversary. Now, to put it mildly, President Donald Trump doesn't have deep knowledge of the world. And to put it a little bit less politely, I don't think that Donald Trump could be the valedictorian of a summer school class. The fact of the matter is, we saw this today with his statement with regard to what's happening in Kashmir itself, when he talked about the fight going back more than 1,000 years. He simply doesn't understand what the depth or the complexity of the situation is. That said, there's an opportunity here for India to educate him. Diplomats right now are far less important in the Trump administration than his personal relationships. We see his personal relationships at play, for example, with regard to his outreach to President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in Turkey, whom he respects, but unfortunately is an influence towards a destabilizing policy in the region. We see Trump's embrace of men like Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia. And Prime Minister Modi is very, very fortunate that he has a close and established relationship with Donald Trump. Now, under President Trump, there is a tendency within Washington to wing it. He doesn't trust the system. He refers to it as the swamp or the deep state. And he prefers to do everything through his own small set of advisors. India, of course, is far different. Prime Minister Modi may be a strong leader, but India has a strong system upon which he relies, especially with regard to the foreign ministry. And so it's traditional that India would use its diplomats for outreach. In this case, it's essential vis-a-vis Pakistan, especially after the Kashmir attack, for Prime Minister Modi to use his close relations with Donald Trump to channel Donald Trump in the right direction. So what should that direction be? Symbolically, after Hamas's October 7th, 2023 attack on Israel, President Joe Biden flew to Israel to declare his solidarity. How powerful would it be if Donald Trump didn't simply issue meaningless statements from Washington, D.C., but flew to New Delhi, if not to Kashmir itself, in order to declare his solidarity with India? That would be a move that would have generational repercussion. But symbolism isn't enough here. There is absolutely the chief and only demand that the chief and only demand that India should make, and it's something that I wrote today in First Post. First Post just put the article up, is that there is no substitute for the formal designation of Pakistan as a state sponsor of terror. We've sanctioned Pakistan before with regard to its nuclear program and other things. I would go further and say that when you have terrorists related to Lashkar-e-Taiba that are supported by Pakistan, that are geographically, they can only come from one location, Pakistan itself. When you have them hunting down Hindus and other non-Muslims, trying to force them to say Islamic prayer, trying to check to see whether they're circumcised or not. It was basically a hunt for Hindus, motivated by nothing other than religious and national hatred. It is terrorism by any definition. And look, policy only works, foreign policy only works when it's calibrated to reality, not when it's calibrated to wishful thinking of what we wish Pakistan would be, and what frankly, arguably, Pakistan might have been for the first 10 years before the ISI really consolidated power, especially since the liberation and the independence of Bangladesh. But this brings me to the Inter-Services Intelligence Agency. If Donald Trump was able to designate the entire Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in Iran as a terror organization, then there is a precedent for designating the entirety of the ISI. Now, of course, Washington and New Delhi do not see Iran policy the same. But let me explain the logic for a moment of the designation of the entirety of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in Iran. One could argue that the United States only should have designated the Quds Force or the military units within the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The reason why there is such a push to designate the entirety of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps was because of its economic wing, called Khatam al-Anbiya. Now, if the official budget of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is only about $8 billion per year, the smuggling income that the Khatam al-Anbiya brings into the Revolutionary Guard is about $11 to $13 billion per year. On top of which, if you look at the Persian, the Farsi language press, there's up to $50 billion worth of single source, no bid contracts to Khatam al-Anbiya, to Revolutionary Guard owned companies. What that basically means is that you almost have an order of magnitude higher importance of the economic wing of the Revolutionary Guard than you do of the military wing in terms of the budgetary support. Now, by designating the entirety of the Revolutionary Guard, whether you agree with US policy or not, what we basically did is increase liability to any other foreign company that would partner with Revolutionary Guard run companies. So for example, the French automobile manufacturer Peugeot, which had been working with Iranian automobile manufacturers, suddenly found themselves liable from lawsuits from victims of terrorism. And other companies simply decided to unwind their financial relations with the Revolutionary Guard because of reputational damage, which they might suffer. And this includes East Asian companies and so forth. Even though many people find unilateral American sanctions to be obnoxious and to be a violation of their sovereignty, the fact of the matter is they can in many ways be effective. So back to the ISI. We heard again from Commodore Vasan reference to the ISI's economic dealings, to its business interests. If we were to designate the entirety of the ISI, what we would be doing is financially handicapping all of those businesses and anyone who trades with them. Even when it comes to the United States and China, we will see what happens with the US and China trade war. But the fact of the matter is, most Chinese companies, if given a choice, continue to trade with certain Pakistani companies or sell to the United States or Europe. They're going to choose selling to the United States and Europe. It's simply a matter of financial common sense. And so by designating the entirety of the ISI, we can put tremendous pressure on the organization. And look, the whole point isn't simply to punish Pakistan. Ultimately, the goal of the United States policy, as it is the goal of India policy, is to live at peace with Pakistan and to have Pakistan be at peace with itself and its neighbors. The fact of the matter is Pakistan is failing. It's failing economically. It's failing through corruption. And what the ISI is doing is simply trying to fan the flames of terrorism inside India in order to distract the Pakistani public from Pakistan's own failings. Now, the reason why this is incredibly important now to tackle Pakistan as a state sponsor of terror and the ISI as a foreign terrorist organization is because we see Pakistan opening up a 2, if not 3-front war. We have the terrorist war in Kashmir. We have the Khalistani threat in Punjab, which again, it's an ISI front. And increasingly, through his own naivete, we have Muhammad Yunus becoming a useful idiot of the ISI as he tries to transform Pakistan, or allows Pakistan to be transformed into an ISI proxy under Jamaat-e Islami. So, when it comes to Modi's phone call with Trump, of course, handling Trump is always a very difficult issue. And India may not like the way it needs to sell the case to Donald Trump. But I would actually argue that Donald Trump needs to be reminded not only of Osama bin Laden's support and his safe haven in Abbottabad, but he also needs to be reminded of the 2008 Mumbai attacks. And when it comes to the Mumbai attacks, it's important to remind Donald Trump that 4 Americans were killed. Now, I acknowledge it's obnoxious to focus on 4 Americans when hundreds of Indians were killed or injured. But we have to sell the case to Donald Trump himself. And the fact is, that case needs to be that the ISI and the Pakistani leadership is playing Donald Trump for a fool. They think he's weak. They think he's stupid. But I, Prime Minister Modi, respect you. India respects you. That's the way we get to the goal of designating Pakistan. And then the simple response is, if Pakistan wants to be undesignated, it has to have meaningful reform. But it should certainly join countries like North Korea and Iran on the state sponsor of terrorism list. And in the past, other countries have gotten off. Sudan, South Yemen, Iraq. It is possible, but we need to look at this objectively rather than subjectively. Now, I'm going to hand the floor back. I'm actually in California right now, in Silicon Valley, or as many people call it, the Bangalore of the United States. But it's just past 5 in the morning here, and so what I want to do is turn the floor back over to the chair. Thank you so much.
Ma'am, you're muted.
Oh, thank you for reminding me. Thank you, Dr. Rubin. Very appreciate you joining us so very early in US from the California time zone. And very interesting remarks were made by both the speakers, and both of them have completed much before their allotted time, and I appreciate them for that. The next speaker is Dr. Anshuman Behera, A New Era in Pakistan-Bangladesh Relations. That is his title. Dr. Behera?
Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am, for the chairing the session and very nicely conducting the. I'm very patiently listening to all the speakers. After listening to all the speakers, I think I have very little to add. I can only corroborate, but I'll try to actually contextualize some of the important issues relating to how these 2 Muslim majority countries are actually coming together, and what are the factors that are actually driving them coming together. And the China as an important third factor here, which remains very, very subtle at this point of time, and what implications this new era of relationship has in terms of actually offering to India, to the security concerns of India. The structure of my presentation is like I'll just contextualize the Pakistan-Bangladesh relationship
Yeah,
in recent times.
this will get over by 6:30.
There is some background news. Can you guys be little muted?
Sir, I think just a minute, sir. Just
Yeah, thank you. So what the socio-political constituencies in Bangladesh in 1971 who opposed the very liberation of Bangladesh from Pakistan are unfortunately in power now. This is something that we need to keep in mind when we actually think of the new era of relationship between between Pakistan and Bangladesh. And there is no point for guessing that who are these people, right? But then look at the Bangladesh political situation right now. It is in a deep flux. A flux in the sense we have something called the interim government. One actually wonders what exactly it means. As Michael Rubin was very, very aptly saying, he's a useful idiot for the extremist forces. We have a kind of a scenario where the government is a puppet in the hands of the extremist forces, right? We had a situation in August 2024 when a democratically elected government was ousted by a manufactured movement, which was actually celebrated by the people who are right now crying and trying to understand their mistakes. I'm hinting at the role of the organizations in the United States in the previous administration in actually engineering and delegitimizing Sheikh Hasina's kind of government in Bangladesh, right? So we have in practically, for all practical purposes, the Jamaat-e Islami Bangladesh, the fountainhead of extremism and Islamic fundamentalism in Bangladesh in the driver's seat. Okay, so let's understand, and this is the situation of Bangladesh. What is the situation of Pakistan? When the Taliban took over, the Pakistan had a role to play in actually helping the Taliban in taking over, in Afghanistan. But then the hope and aspirations of this state-sponsored terrorism and the army in Pakistan, it didn't last long, for the simple reason that the Afghanistan Taliban was very quick to understand what they have got into and the role of and the illicit or the kind of ill intention of the Pakistan army, ISI, and the deep state there. In actually furthering the Islamist agenda in Afghanistan, right? So now we have a situation where Pakistan is making a lot of effort to re-establish its relationship with Bangladesh, right? So it is trying to, because it doesn't have a very good relationship with Afghanistan, which it actually thought that it can have a very good relationship with Afghanistan, and that is where it can actually further its agenda. But now, once the Afghanistan is not in the right position to support the agenda of the Pakistan power elite, we have a situation where Pakistan is actually making a lot of effort to re-establish a relationship with Bangladesh. With this introduction, and let me tell you, like, what are the prospectus and what is the problem Pakistan might face in actually establishing its relationship with Bangladesh. When it comes to the important prospectus, two factors actually play a vital role in actually helping Pakistan re-establish its connection with Bangladesh. I'm not getting into the history of humiliation that Bangladesh faced because of Pakistan, because that demands another lecture. There is a paucity of time. But let me tell you, there are two agencies. Two important factors and two reasons why Pakistan and Bangladesh can come together and try to actually consolidate their relationship. One is furthering the Islamist agenda. If one has read the Hiranmaya Karlekar's book, Bangladesh, the next Afghanistan. And he wrote maybe say 15 years back this particular book, and this book sounds very prophetic even today, that Bangladesh, long before he wrote for Pakistan, that was going in a kind of Afghanistan way. So those of us, we actually hoped that with a democratically elected government in Bangladesh, understand this was Sheikh Hasina's government, starting from 2009 to 2024. In 24, almost like 15 years of Sheikh Hasina's regime there, we all thought that democracy and the values of democracy in terms of institutionalization of democracy, people internalizing the democratic values were getting consolidated. But what we overlooked or we failed to notice in Bangladesh, all of us, is like the consolidation of the Islamist forces. The war criminal trial, the ban on Jamaat-e-Islami, the ban on other Islamist forces actually contributed very little in de-radicalizing the Islamic fundamentalism in Bangladesh. And that is where Bangladesh arguably is one of the important countries in the globe which actually furthers or has been trying to further the Islamist agenda. And as the previous speakers also mentioned, Pakistan, on that we have very little disagreement on this. Pakistan is also a country that is actually grounded on the Islamist agenda. So since there is a commonality of this Islamist agenda in furthering the Islamist agenda, this can be a very important factor for both the countries to come. The next is the important reason why they should come together is the commonality of an anti-India sentiment. Now, if you see, a lot of the public support that Jamaat-e-Islami actually garnered, and a lot of this public support, the so-called student organizations actually, tried to consolidate. An important factor was their anti-India rhetoric, and the Pakistan state, for all, among all other kind of factors, is necessarily a state that is founded on anti-India kind of, basis. So when these two important factors actually contribute, both the countries coming together, who would Pakistan, collaborate with, Of course, one important actor or agency, Pakistan, which has been very, very pro-Pakistan from the very beginning. Those are the ones who sided with Pakistan in the massacre in 1971, is the Jamaat-e-Islami, right? Then the second important factor, the second important agency where Pakistan can have a kind of support base and can collaborate is the radicalized elements in the security forces. You do not need me to tell you that how radicalized, if not all, but a substantial section of the portion of the Bangladesh security forces are radicalized. And we have seen this in the Pilkhana mutiny in 2009. And we also reports, if reports are to be believed, we also seen in the past couple of months how some of the high ranked Bangladeshi armies are in direct touch with the Pakistan army and ISI. So that is where you have two solid constituencies in Bangladesh, and these are very important constituencies. One who is controlling the power right now, that is Jamaat-e-Islami, and the other, which is known for all notorious reasons, for capturing power, for killing the people who actually liberated the state from Pakistan, that is the security forces. But the Pakistan's alliance with Bangladesh is not going to be that easy as expected. We would, the reports are coming that Bangladesh, in its kind of reconnecting with Pakistan, has started demanding that some amount of money needs to be given to Bangladesh. The Pakistanis who are trapped here in Bangladesh needs to be given back, or they need to go back to Pakistan. Those reports are coming. Okay, I'm not getting into the report, but what is important here is There are other constituencies, this is where I make a distinction between Islamic and Islamist. There are political parties which are actually Islamic in nature, but not necessarily Islamist. The BNP is a good example, though they have taken support and they have allied with the JI in the past to form the government, and this has always been tactical, and this has never been to support or on a giving clear support to the Jamaat-e-Islami. This distinction we need to make, and this is where India has to also establish good relationship with forces like BNP. So now my research also tells that BNP is feeling completely sidelined in the Bangladesh politics, because the Jamaat-e-Islami, which took the help of BNP to legitimize its revolution or its kind of, protest against Sheikh Hasina, slowly, feels that the BNP is a force that can be actually disposed, right? Like BNP, you have the Jatiya Party and the other political forces, Islamic but not Islamist nature. They might actually, and they will resist, any kind of, role that Pakistan plays in Bangladesh. And the supporters of Awami League will also play an important role. Remember, whenever there has been an attempt to completely Islamize or bring in the Islamist kind of, the complete, here and there, some kind of, assertion of Islamic values in the constitution, or tweaking the constitution in terms of bringing some religious element into it. Okay, this has been tolerated by the Bangladeshis. But whenever there has been a kind of an attempt to give it a completely Islamist kind of thing, radical Islam, there has been a protest. Starting from 1989 to 1975, you see we have examples there. But when the last portion of my talk is how does it and what does it mean to India? One is the security concern, and this has been discussed, and Ambassador Anil actually mentioned this. I also recently wrote a piece that the Pahalgam attack should not be actually engaged in isolation from the Murshidabad, the role of Bangladeshis crossing over and participating in the kind of the communal protest. That is where you have a situation where there is a convergence and alliance of the Islamist forces, and this will not simply operate in the physical security sense, coming and actually carrying out the terrorist attacks. They will also continue to operate in the social spaces where the social fabrics of India will be actually disturbed. The Murshidabad riot, where the Hindus had to actually leave their houses, and the role of Bangladeshi, miscreants actually coming and switching over to Indian territory and doing all this is a good example. Last couple of minutes, this is where, on business wise, there is some interesting kind of, statistics. India actually contributes 14% of Bangladesh total import, and China contributes around 26%, and Pakistan contributes just to 1%. Pakistan remains completely, negligent, and it doesn't matter to Bangladesh. But with Pakistan and Bangladesh coming together, we have a third party called China that might actually, bring some kind of, difficulty to the India's business interest there in Bangladesh. Okay, from 14%, it might, they expected this thing, it might come down to 10% in this year. Okay, in the next year, we do not know. And when it comes to the foreign policy, India's neighborhood first policy will face a tough challenge because we have a kind of hostile neighbor relationship with Pakistan, and with this kind of forces in the driver's seat in Bangladesh, like the Jamaat-e-Islam, I don't think we'll have a very good relationship with Bangladesh going ahead. That is where the neighborhood policy, the neighborhood first policy, will be confined only to Nepal, Bhutan, or Maldives too. And Maldives also, we have the relationship has actually ruptured a bit. Okay, so accordingly, and we for last 10 years, what we have successfully done, that we had sidelined the terrorist hotbed, that is Pakistan, without actually investing too much on the SARC. Right now, with Bangladesh, Pakistan coming together, if Afghanistan for the Islamist element also from Afghanistan join, and then a Muslim majority country in Maldives, they also join. There is a possibility there is a Islamic or Islamist kind of an association in South Asia, these four countries, which India has to actually think what could be its actually neighborhood policy next, actually taking these things into consideration. The last part, let's not forget the China factor here, the investment of China and Inu's visit to China and the kind of statements he made in China and the Chinese kind of a cold response to all these, like not rejecting or not criticizing those kind of responses coming from Inus. Also offers, because China, there is a lot of literature which holds China, things that China is considers India as a national enemy, but there is also one has to take it with a pinch of salt. The China factor one has to actually bring in to analyze the Bangladesh and Pakistan relationship, or renewing the Pakistan-Bangladesh relationship, and the tacit support or subtle support from China, what it would mean for India in the near future. I rest my talk here, and thanks for the opportunity, and over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Behera. I've already written in the chat box that session is now open for Q&A. All the speakers are requested to switch on their cameras, and the participants are requested to write their questions. I'll read it out, and then to respective presenters, kindly mention the name of the speaker when you are writing your questions. In the interim, the 5 minutes that was taken over by introduction of the speakers, I would like to use that 5 minutes now and introduce a very unconventional idea or a notion that has not been publicly articulated by any of the government agencies or by any of the experts or scholars, barring a few. I'm not saying that I'm the first person to say this, but then it has not been a part of the public discourse whenever Pakistan is being talked about. And that is the idea of irredentism. Many political science teachers also do not talk about this concept. I am sick of hearing Pakistan keep saying, we will take back Kashmir every now and then, because that's the only whipping boy that Pakistan can throw at its hapless citizens. I wish to state that let there be an irredentist movement. Of course, the current Pakistan is not a value-added asset, but a nuisance that has been unable to manage itself. But supposing we raise a slogan of irredentism, because I'm not a practicing Hindu, but I am convinced of the Sanatana Dharma and its greatness. As a Hindu, I wish the places, holy places of Indian antiquity that have been taken over in the name of partition by other agencies and countries, thanks to the British machinations, to come back and merge with India. And I think this will be an interesting idea that needs to be promoted in the years to come. Then when it comes to the second comment is about the nuclear arsenal that Pakistan keeps saber rattling about. There is something called the nuclear codes that needs to be mated when a launch has to take place. Now, who has the control? According to media reports of the early 2010 and 27 period, Seymour Hersh especially has been talking about Pakistanis keeping two in the side and handing over the responsibility to the rest of the nukes to trustworthy agencies. Now, trustworthy is within quotes, but Do they really have the two nukes by the side? And if so, are they capable of launching them? I'm not questioning the competence or the professionalism of Pakistani army. They are. They are thoroughly trained and good professionals. They have excelled in the art of deceptive warfare for decades now vis-a-vis India, and they have been successful in their in promoting their abilities and enhancing the capabilities of their Islamic brethren in the Islamic world. But is this could only be saber rattling? Pakistan's consequences of a nuclear attack are well known, and I'm sure there are saner minds. This attack in Pahalgam the other day is the ambition of one man, Asif Munir, and nothing more than that. Every general, every now and then, wants to go down in the history of Pakistan as the Mahan Admi of the era when he was in office. That's what Asif Munir was doing. We should have been better prepared after he ranted in one of those overseas Pakistanis meeting about the difference between Islam and Hinduism. Well, at any rate, the tragedy has happened. But I'm introducing the concept of irredentism and then the merger of what we call Pakistan today back with India. Thank you so much for your attention. And now I see several questions. I think I need to read them out. The first question is to Ambassador Anil Trigunayat. Considering the emergence of new Islamic alliances such as Turkey, Qatar, and Saudi UAE blocs, does Pakistan risk marginalization within the Islamic world? How is it navigating these fault lines? That's the first question to you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. And I must say, your idea about irredentism can have a great resonance, but
Thank you.
I think it needs to be further developed exactly how to
Go about it.
incorporate essentially those who are bent upon destabilization by any means. So that is the biggest problem, because we always have some rogue actors that just want to destabilize everything. I mean, routinely everyone wants peace. There is very much there, but what we are looking at is just one actor in Pakistan which controls the state is continuing to do what they are doing here.
Sorry for interjecting. I want peace too, but not with Pakistan, not any longer.
Well, I think, I always say that, the neighbors are a gift of history, but they are gift of geography, but pains of history. So you have to deal with them. It happens often. Well, coming to the question that has been asked by the forum about Turkey and Qatar relations. I mean, they are actually also driven by Muslim Brotherhood. And if you come to think of it, that Pakistan also considered the Islamic Muslim Brotherhood as one of the things. It has been also enshrined in their Article 40 of the Constitution in 1973. And so therefore, they project themselves as not only an Islamic nation, but a nation that is there to protect Islam and Islamic countries. And that's why they are the only country, Islamic country, Iran is about to be, but they are the only country with a nuclear weapon. And they use it, whether for everybody, anybody. I mean, you know that there are no checks, and Madam just mentioned about it, so they have been offering this. We have seen it, that how this AQ Khan I mentioned about is doing that. So Pakistan, as far as Turkey and Qatar are concerned, specifically, are not losing any relevance. I had written actually about some time back that there is quite a possibility of a new kind of a grouping emerging. And that will also, of course, a great deal depend on how Russia-US relations proceed eventually under Trump and Putin, that there could be a grouping, something called Cryptarch might emerge. And Cryptarch means China, Russia, Iran, Pakistan, Turkey, Afghanistan, and Qatar as an outlier. Qatar is also a non-NATO ally. So this is quite possible in that sense. But at the same time, I would like to say that all these countries, especially the Gulf world rich countries, they have also been weaponizing their foreign policy very often. We have seen what happened in Libya and some other countries. And for doing that, they also need, they don't have their own people. I mean, they're very small populations, most of them. But they are playing a much bigger role in different parts. Qatar, for example, plays a very big role in different parts in Africa, in North Africa, and elsewhere, even in Israel-Hamas war and everywhere. So they are emerging very strong. For them, Pakistan is not necessary, but it is a useful country to have. So today, as I said earlier, for about 3-4 decades, Pakistan was able to sell itself from the standard protocol that it has set up as Islamic country, run to them for help and everything. You have seen in recent times when Pakistan has faced tremendous financial problems and troubles, they always run to either Qatar, to UAE, to Saudi Arabia, looking for some money here and there. And this time, all these countries have been far more, I would say, saner in their approach. And so they have become more transactional, trying to use it to their own advantage when they're giving something, not blindly just to support Wahhabism or any kind of a philosophy, because they themselves are going out of it. Especially Saudi Arabia under Mohammed bin Salman has become a very reformist country. And therefore, their support to that. But there are other organizations which, by way of zakat, by way of contributions, Turkey, Qatar, and others, who are funding various organizations like that. And therefore, Pakistan has to depend on these countries for some reason or other. So it has to create this nuisance value. China is also really tired of supporting Pakistan blatantly. I mean, it's China-Pakistan economic corridor is facing a lot of trouble. But in my view, Pakistan has become a state of China to be used against India. And therefore, we need to be very careful and very worried about these trends. Our relationship with most countries in the region is at its best today, I must say that. I mean, this government's success of its policies, if anywhere I accord, it is in West Asia, where this is really a thing, and they understand it very well. They come to your rescue often. Today, I mean, as you know, even Iran and Saudi Arabia, both are talking. The foreign minister spoke to Pakistani foreign minister and the Indian foreign minister, and they are trying to diffuse the escalation from there. So I think that Pakistan is not going anywhere for the moment, and it will continue to use its nuisance value, as I said, with every actor in the way it can.
Thank you very much, sir. You have a second question, but then I'll move on to Dr. Rubin, who's the second person to whom the question was addressed. Dr. Rubin, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, very well, sir. Have you seen the question in the chat box, or do you want me to read
indeed.
it out? Yeah, okay, then go ahead.
Okay, the question is about the Pakistan defense minister's recent questions that Pakistan did the dirty work for the United States, supporting and training terror groups under the cover of strategic cooperation. Frankly, the Pakistani defense minister is trying to foist off responsibility for Pakistan's own agency, for Pakistan's own decisions. Let's remember, the ISI made a concerted and decisive turn toward promoting Islamism, not when the Soviets invaded Afghanistan, but 8 years earlier, when Bangladesh won its independence. The reason was because Pakistan realized that all this talk of Jinnah and about Pakistan being an Islamic state was meaningless because Pakistan didn't have a strong sense of identity. It's all well and good to pretend that Pakistan was an Islamic state, but in reality, all Pakistanis understood that the Punjabis ran the country. And with the succession of the Bengalis, you had a situation where Pakistan's ISI looked at the Pashtunistan movement in a new light. Remember that for all the United States, at least, talks about how there was infiltration into Afghanistan from Pakistan while we were still occupying Afghanistan. The fact of the matter is the infiltration in the 1950s and 1960s was going the other way, which was one of the main reasons why Pakistan refused to join the CENTO Treaty during the Cold War. Now, with the ISI supporting Islamism as a way to overwhelm the ethnic identity of various Pakistani groups, you had a situation once the Soviets invaded Afghanistan. By nature of Afghanistan being landlocked, yes, the United States wanted to resist the Soviets. But the way the deal worked was the United States would provide the arms, the Saudis would provide the financing, but Pakistan, by nature of being the only border we could use, with the Soviet Union still the Soviet Union and with the United States having broken relations with Iran, it meant that the ISI, in effect, was distributing the weaponry. Now, when the Soviets invaded Afghanistan, Afghanistan wasn't an Islamic state. But what the ISI did was they would only distribute weaponry to the so-called Peshawar 7, to the 7 groups, many of which became the Northern Alliance, that identified themselves with Islamism rather than with ethnicity, especially with Pashtun nationalism. And so within the matter of months, all the other groups in Afghanistan that had been prominent until then basically were starved of resources and disappeared. This is where we actually see the transformation of Afghan society, or at least Afghan politics, into an Islamist front. Now, some people will say that the United States created the Taliban. That's nonsense. Say what you will about the CIA, but the CIA doesn't train 3- and 4-year-olds. And the Taliban were 3 and 4 years old at the time of the Soviet invasion. We were supporting Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, who frankly is just as bad. But we can't be achronological in our interpretation of this. Pakistan made a decision. Pakistan had agency. Now, what really strikes me about Pakistan, when I compare it to other countries that have engaged in the strategy of promoting Islamism, take Saudi Arabia, for example, which promoted Salafism through much of the late 20th century. It wasn't the September 11th, 2001 terror attacks that caused Saudi Arabia to crack down on the extremism. It was a few years later in 2003 and 2004 when you started having the compound bombings in Riyadh, the underwear bombings on airplanes and so forth. And that's when the Saudis realized that they had created a monster which was going to, destabilize themselves. Syria, too, cracked down a little bit too late when Bashar al-Assad and Hafiz al-Assad had supported Islamism for export only, especially after 1982 and the crackdown in Hama itself. What makes Pakistan special is Pakistan is the one country that has supported this Islamism. And even when they experience the blowback, they simply don't understand that this is a wildfire that was sparked by their own strategy. If Pakistan wants to survive, they need to crack down and crack down hard. I'm tired of the whining I hear from the ISI that they have suffered so many casualties. They've suffered so many casualties because they created the menace. And the fact of the matter is they want to play it both ways. I've actually sat with a former head of the ISI in the Islamabad Club, which is an oasis inside Islamabad. And Islamabad, of course, is an oasis within Pakistan. And you can drink your whiskey in the Islamabad Club and believe that perhaps this menace isn't going to strangle Pakistan. But the fact of the matter is Karachi is already lost. Lahore is already lost. Pindi is already lost. And the fact of the matter is the ISI is too stupid to understand this. And to blame others for this I blame the United States for some of our relations with Pakistan and for not calibrating our policy towards reality. But the fact of the matter is, Pakistan is a sovereign country. Pakistan makes its own decisions. And certainly, despite tensions in the United States, between the United States and India in the past, the United States hasn't supported the terror groups like Harakat al-Mujahideen or Lashkar-e-Taiba or so forth that Pakistan has created. I mean, frankly, I would go further. It's not only Pakistan which should be a state sponsor of terror and the ISI that should be a foreign terrorist organization, but the entirety of Jamaat-e Islami in both Bangladesh and Pakistan should also be considered a terrorist organization. And the Pakistani defense minister is being cynical or an idiot, I don't know which, in trying to blame everyone else but himself.
Thank you, Dr. Rubin. The next question is to Ambassador Trigunayat ji again. Sir, have you read the question?
One second, ma'am. Which one is it?
Wahhabism played a key role in Arab-Pakistan relations. Do you believe that Saudi renunciation of Wahhabism and Pakistan turning into epicenter of Wahhabism, could we possibly see deterioration of Pakistan's bilateral relations with Saudis and the UAE in the coming years?
Yes, ma'am. In fact, I have mentioned it in my presentation that already the major Gulf countries and Saudi Arabia and UAE especially have already changed their course. I mean, it's a transactional relationship. They want to have a Karachi port, UAE, DP World will invest in that. Saudi Arabia want to have a refinery in Gwadar, they will do that. Occasionally, they will bail them out financially so that the country doesn't go completely bust. Because everybody is fearing from that point of view. Pakistan has been able to utilize itself in the context of Afghanistan with almost every country. That they are the only ones who can sort out Afghanistan. But today they have a major problem with Afghanistan itself. And therefore, I don't see that the relationship is going to be continuing in the context of Wahhabi philosophy or the Salafi philosophy, which was promoted earlier by the Saudis and other conservative countries. But today they are going in a different direction altogether. And so I don't see that there's going to be a relationship. It will be a transactional relationship because they don't want to go Pakistan under. That's the thing.
Thank you, sir. The next question is not addressed to any speaker, but then as we are talking about Pakistan in the geopolitics, how do you see Russia's pivot to Asia and its surprising engagements with Pakistan, as it always been partner of the USA?
Well, I think that Russia, you remember that in the 2000s, we had a strategic partnership when President Putin came to power. Over time, during that period itself, Russia was also looking to have great relationship with United States. And they felt cheated eventually. Then Putin came and he tried to do something. And then India became a major partner. Once again, the relationship was back to normal. And I remember having served during that time that there was no scope for their relationship with Pakistan at all. But then the world moved on. Everybody wants good relationship with the United States. And India also wanted to. So Pakistan and China and US became, China and Russia, have become increasingly closer in this region. And Afghanistan also was a major factor. As I said, that there, Pakistan has been able to sell it. I have often, many times, discussed this issue with the Russians in the past. And they always mention that this is because of Afghan factor. Because from Afghanistan, they were having problems with the drugs and all that, which were going, 25% of the Russians were impacted by the drugs coming from Afghanistan since then. And they had not forgotten that they had lost in Afghanistan. So obviously, they thought that Pakistan could be helpful. And that was one of the arguments they used to give us, that because of Afghanistan, we're going with Pakistan. But over time, they realized that since we were getting very close to Russia, to United States, they said, if you are close to USA, so why can't we be close to others? But my theory is that this happened, whatever interaction they have had with China, with Pakistan, is because of China factor.
Sir, you have one more question. I'll request you to be brief by way of answer. What key factors have influenced the evolution of Pakistan's relationship with Iran and Turkey, particularly in the light of recent challenges such as regional conflicts, strategic partnerships and its role in the organization like OIC?
Well, with Turkey, the relationship is not new. It has always been there because Turkey has been looking at having countries which are supporting it, and Pakistan is one of the main countries, as I mentioned also earlier, which has been trying to support Turkey, especially in the case of Cyprus. So they scratch each other's backs. That was very much there. Turkey is an important country, Eurasian country, and Pakistan has been trying to provide their link to South Asia. And therefore it played, as I said, it plays like a rentier estate. So it's ready to work for anybody whoever pays. And that's why it makes itself useful. As far as Iran is concerned, I mean, they have a problem with Iran. Now you have seen that both of them exchange fire and killing each other on the Baloch Liberation Army across their borders. So, still they try to make up being an Islamic nation. But I don't think that there is any great love lost between Iran and Pakistan. But Turkey definitely remains a bulwark for Pakistan.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Behera, you have 2 questions. Hope you have read them already. Have you?
No, ma'am, I was sitting simultaneously. Yep,
Okay.
I'll just read them. Okay.
Yeah. While Bangladesh emerged as an independent nation from the East-West Pakistan divide, recent developments, including illegal migration into India and rising pockets of radicalism, suggest that certain strategic patterns undermining Indian interests persist. In this light, can we truly speak of a new era in Pak-Bangladesh relations, or are we witnessing a continuation of the old fault lines in a new geopolitical form? And the next question to you is, you have differentiated between Islamic and Islamist parties in Bangladesh. This has been an old differentiation for your information. You have deferred BNP as an Islamic party. Do you think it is really possible to have transactional relations with BNP given its relations with Pakistan and past record against India? These are your 2 questions. I request you to be brief as I have to close the session.
Yeah, very quickly. I think the first question, is it the old kind of thing? In the old, what was there that we had we knew our enemy very well. Over the last 40 years, 1971 till date, we had some kind of hope with Bangladesh, and that is why you are right. This is a old kind of problem. But at the same time, there are constituencies who will have to live with this kind of optimistic idea. There are constituencies in Bangladesh that actually, if not completely subscribe the idea of India, but they do not actually subscribe doing anything anti-India. And that is where the pro-Bangladeshi is not necessarily always anti-India, that kind of a thing. So BNP, what I think, is not necessarily an Islamist party. Just imagine, when Ziaur Rahman was in power, he didn't try to change the constitution. He brought amendments, but then he didn't try to change the constitution the way these kind of Islamist organizations are actually doing. So the briefly saying that we need to actually also keep our doors open and our options actually open. We cannot actually paint everybody there in one color, saying that they are a kind of anti-India and this is what Islamic and Islamist. Most of the time we forget this distinction, and that is why it is important to kind of mention, people actually talking about their religious things, then talking about the supremacist thing, an aspect of their religion. These are 2 different things. That differentiation and that distinction needs to be kept in mind. That is why I made this distinction. Of course, it is old, but it is very, very important in this present era also.
Yeah, thank you very much. There is one question that was addressed to me. Ma'am, when you raise the demand for irredentist claims, does that not change the revanchist claims of Pakistan on Kashmir also to irredentism? The attempt to call something irredentist sort of undermines political and public autonomy, don't you think? Also, what other areas would you think can be integrated, not integrated, to India through irredentist claims? Look, when I post this question in the public platform, the idea is the rest of the partitioned pockets of India have never created problems. Briefly, Afghanistan has posed challenges to India's security and strategic autonomy. But Pakistan has been continuing with its nuisance value. We accepted the partition perpetrated on us by the British. But thereafter, it is the Pakistanis who attacked pockets of Kashmir and occupied the present POK. We did not violate the Partition Act. It is Pakistan that did it so. And it has done that repeatedly in the last few decades. And throughout its existence, its one-point agenda has been anti-Indianism and anti-India, and the pro-Kashmir and integration of Kashmir has been a whipping boy that Pakistan has erected repeatedly. Bangladesh has not done that. Of late, with Mohammad Yunus in the Gaddi, probably there is a nuisance value of Bangladesh that is increasing because he goes to China and announces that India is landlocked. The seven sisters of India are landlocked. It doesn't take us much to convert that landlocked nature of India into an openness into the sea, if we so decide and so choose. Nobody in the neighborhood can undermine the military capabilities of India, especially in 2025. That's my answer to you, Priyanshu Pandey. And I think there's one last question to Dr. Behera again. No, to Dr. Rubin. Sir, you referred to Pakistan movement in your previous answer. Do you believe that US foreign policy should consider Pashtun Tehfuz movement as one of the key players in their Pak-Afghan policy? Do you believe Pashtun nationalism could possibly be an important component of US as well as India's Pak-Afghan policy? Dr.
The
Rubin?
short answer is yes. The short answer is yes. Look, if Pakistan is supporting separatism in India with the so-called Khalistan movement and Pakistan is basically an imperialist power when it comes to Kashmir, I see absolutely no reason why India shouldn't respond in kind. The only difference is Indians want to be part of India, and most Pakistani constituent groups don't want to be part of Pakistan. Pakistan is an artificial state and if the Baluch should be free and if the Pashtun should be free, fine. And I think the United States should support that.
There is a question to both Ambassador Trigunayat ji as well as to myself, how an independent Balochistan can be useful for India and how independence Balochistan change the balance of power in the region. Ambassador, do you have do I have your permission to answer for both of us?
Please.
Thank you. I'm looking at the watch, sir. That's the only reason. 6:30, I have to close the session.
Right. Absolutely.
Look, young man, Reza Hussain Bor, and both the questions are from the same person. Look, the Baluch have been overtaken by Pakistan forcibly. The Khan of Kalat wanted to merge with India, but then his brother was kidnapped and the brother who was ruling had to sign the instrument of integration with Pakistan. And so it was a forcible occupation because they've learned their lessons probably from, I don't remember the timeline whether Kashmir was first or Balochistan was first, but then this is how it went on in Balochistan. But today, if Kashmir issue is resolved militarily by India, then India should and will undoubtedly support Balochistan's liberation. Dr. Rubin has already been on record stating that United States will be happy with a separate Pashtunistan and a Balochistan. So that is my response in brief. We can go endlessly. The Baluch resources have been drained by the Punjabi dominant Pakistani governments and the army, and they have no, the usual example that is given in the public media is that gas reaches Lahore from Balochistan, but gas doesn't reach Baloch households. But the better example would be, with all the smartness in society today and in the world, all the smart resources like the rare earth elements are available in Balochistan in a rich trajectory. And Baloch is being held thanks to China, not because Pakistan or Balochistan love one another. That's the short answer. I think we have spent the session in a worthwhile manner, and I appreciate and thank all the paper presenters today. Thank you very much. Grateful to everybody. Dr. Rubin, I appreciate you joining very early, so very early on a working day from, or maybe it's a holiday for you in United States. And each one of you by name, Ambassador Trigunayat, Ambassador, then Dr. Behera and Commodore Vasan, and Dr. Rubin. I thank all of you for your presentations and precise answers. Thank you. I thank the organizers for inviting me to chair this session. It was a pleasant evening for me, listening to a galaxy of speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Aparna?